For this problem, we're going to find the zeros, which is the same thing as finding the solutions, finding the x-intercepts of this particular function. Now, when we're asked to solve a function, the first thing that we should really do, take a look at the function, take a look at what kind of function it is. So this is a third-degree function. Take a look at what we can do to solve this. If you're able to factor the function, I would recommend definitely start with that. That's the most precise way to solve an equation. Check to see if it factors yes or no. If it doesn't factor, then we need to look at other techniques. So for this particular problem, this one actually does factor. And I can tell that this factors, well, first off, we have 4 terms in the problem. And typically when it comes to factoring, if you're trying to factor a 4-term polynomial, grouping is typically the way to go. And grouping says chop the problem in half and factor out a GCF from each grouping. So if I look at this front grouping here, the GCF would be x squared. And if we pull out x squared, right, factor it out to the front, divide it out from that grouping, and that's going to leave us with an x minus 2 when we reduce that. Pull out the GCF on the second grouping back over here. GCF of negative 9x and an 18 is going to be a minus 9. Remember to pull out the negative here in front, and 9 and 18 has a 9 in common, which means our GCF is a negative 9, and when we pull that out, we are left with an x minus 2. In factor by grouping, you are supposed to be left with the same factor inside the parentheses, which means our next step, factor out that GCF once again. Since they each have an x minus 2, we're going to pull this x minus 2 out to the front, divide it from our equation just like we did up here. X minus 2 cancels with x minus 2, so we drop down the x squared. X minus 2 cancels with x minus 2 here, and drop down the minus 9. Put parentheses around that, and that's the factoring portion for this problem. Once you have an equation in factored form, zero factor property, split each factor up, set them each equal to 0, and solve. So we're going to say that x minus 2 is equal to 0, and we're going to say that x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. Solve both of these equations. So this one over here, all we have to do is add 2 to each side, and we get that x is equal to 2. That's our first solution. Remember that this is a cubic, so the fact that this is cubic tells us we should have 3 solutions to this problem. The first is x equals 2. Solutions 2 and 3 are going to come from solving this little mini equation. Add the 9 to each side, giving us x squared is equal to 9. Take the square root of each side, giving us that x is equal to a plus or minus 3 there when we take that square root of 9. So that gives us solutions 2 and 3. So that is it for this problem.